part of what makes working on consoles and repairing them successful is a lot down to skill and technique that you learn over the years. I always like to try and show you guys dedicated videos of certain techniques and very specific topics in a short video. Today I want to show you a good way of cleaning up rot, electrolyte and dirt on circuit boards, as well as a few ways that you repair traces. These are both really common in working with damaged consoles. Often when you start working on consoles, you'll see things like this. The overall state of the board is pretty bad. We have electrolyte here, turning the solder a dull colour. We have old flux here that's yellowing. We've got white with a slight hint of blue, but not much. This will be water damage. So this area is perfect for showing you the issues with all of these. Today I just want to focus on first a general cleanup, how I'm going to just clean, say, this area of the board before I work on it, and then I'll show you some trace repair. Everything is better with heat, so the first thing we're going to do is get my hot air station, and I want to warm up this area of the board to get it nice and hot. I'm going to remove this chip as well while we're at it to give us space to clean up properly. Try to use a really flat tweezer or something that isn't metal because you don't want to damage the traces underneath. And you can now see all of the exposed traces and how grimy they are. So there's a few ways to clean this up. The first, let's heat up the board again, get it nice and toasty. And while that's hot, I'm going to grab a melamine sponge. I'm going to cover it with IPA. So I probably should have done this first before warming up the board. And while it's warm, you want to just literally scrub on the board. And you can see already how quickly that's cleaned up 90% of the dirt. So here's uncleaned, and here's cleaned, and here's unfed pug, and there's fed pug. And that's as good as we get with just the IPA clean and sponge. The next up, to fix these pads, we're just going to put flux on and reflow them with solder. We're just going to rub down these pins, and this will remove the old dull solder and replace it with fresh. And you can see now, look how shiny and clean all them pads are, and look at the difference here. This is like dull grey, this is shiny grey. So next I want to show you, let's say we've got a nice fine trace here that's broken, and we can see this trace just had an accident with a scalpel. So now it's not connected from here to here, and there's basically a slight break here. This is very common, and they'll normally break along this line, so this simulates perfectly how a normal trace would damage. Let's restore this. The first thing we want to do is scrape away the silk screen that's covering the trace to expose some fresh copper underneath. And now that's nicely exposed and cleaned with IPA, you can see we've got some fresh copper we can tin a wire to and basically join it back to this pad. So the job is to attach a wire to the leg of the IC here and to this cut trace here. That literally involves using wire. So I think there's kind of 3 levels to technicians and repair. Most people find out about Kynar fairly quickly. If you're still using something like this, then definitely do some reading up first. But most people know to not use big fat wire, and they discover Kynar wire. Well, this is kind of, to me, the beginner level still. So I would not use this to do trace repair. This is for power lines or restoring 5-volt rails or heavy grounds. Most people after this discover this, which is called enamel wire. You can get it in various thicknesses. This is 0.2 mil, so this is a good universal trace wire that you can use. So I can show you how to use that. But instead, if you want to take it to the next level, we can use something like this. This is like 0.3 millimeters, which is sort of thicker than human hair. This is 0.2 millimeters, which is human hair thickness. This is 0.05 millimeter, and I can get it thinner. This is silver wire, and there's no coating, so this is conductive. Whereas the Kynar and the enamel, even though this looks like bare copper, you can see the end where the enamels come off has been tinned. So this is coated and not conductive if you touch it together. The same with this, but this is just instantly conductive. And when you get down to this thin, that's why you don't want the coating on. So today I'm going to show you how to use this ridiculously thin wire to do this trace repair. So the technique is the same no matter what you're doing. You want to apply some flux to the pin. I'm purposely going to use the massive soldering iron tip, so there's a huge wedge here to show you the size of the tip doesn't matter. And if you're going to use wire that is insulated, you need to strip that first. But as you can see here, when I move this really thin wire and you can barely even see it, I'm just going to touch on the pin with the iron while the wire is there. And you can see it's just instantly soldered on. That's now already attached. And the last step is to attach it to this trace. So if we just move that wire out of the way, blob some solder onto this trace. It's just enough to tin it. Clean with IPA. A tiny bit of flux. There's our repaired trace. And the wire is literally as thin as the original trace. The only downside to using the wire this thin is it's very delicate and it cannot carry any current. As well as if we're cleaning this, we need to be careful. So as we clean, you want to brush strokes with the wire, because if you rub too firmly, you're going to snap that wire. It is very delicate. But if you know it's a data pin, you know, a signal pin, not a power pin, this is by far the best technique to easily attach wires. It's much simpler and safer than using the thicker wires that can actually pull and rip traces. You'll never rip a trace pulling this. This will just snap. It's super light. But you can use whichever wire you prefer. The technique's identical. You'd basically expose traces and then solder from the trace to the pin. And you can see here is Kynar wire, which most people think is thin. And against the actual silver wire, you could fit literally 10 of these silver wires into the thickness of this Kynar wire. So hopefully some of you found that useful, and you can use that technique in trace repair. If you guys have any other tips or tricks that you might want to share with me so I can also learn, definitely let me know. Or if you think there's a more god level approach to trace repair than using silver wire, I'd definitely be interested to hear. So that's it for this one, guys. I'll catch you in the next.